Vae Victis. Suffering to the conquered. Ironic that now I was the one suffering. Not anything as pedestrian as physical pain, rather the cruel jab of impotent anger. The hunger for revenge.
Did you know Kain's iconic line from Blood Omen was mispronounced? When the phrase Vae Victis was first introduced into the Legacy of Kain mythos, creator Dennis Dyack felt the battlecry was perfect for his cunning but determined protagonist. The Latin phrase comes from an old tale about a Celtic warrior by the name of Brennus. In 390 BC, an army of Gauls led by Brennus attacked Rome, capturing all of the city except for the Capitoline Hill. The besieged Romans attempted to buy their salvation by offering the Gauls payment in exchange for their safety. The Gauls accepted, demanding 1,000 pounds of gold. While the gold was being measured, a few Roman officials accused the Gauls of using heavier weights to extort more gold from the defeated Romans. In response to these accusations, Brennus threw his sword onto the scales and uttered the famous words,
Vae Victis!
Which in English translates to, Woe to the conquered. Essentially, the Celtic chieftain reminded the Romans that they had been beaten and should not expect leniency. Now they had no choice but to surrender even more gold to counterbalance both the Gauls' weights and the extra weight of the sword. When making Blood Omen, the developers couldn't find anyone to confirm the authentic form of the words and chose to use the take which sounded the best. Most modern Latin scholars believe that ancient Romans would have pronounced it something like Vae Victis, but it's hard to know for sure. Honestly though, while Vae Victis might be historically accurate, I much prefer the formidable way in which Kain and Raziel pronounce it throughout the series.
Play on, little vampire. Play on.
Vae Victis!
And while we're on the subject of the battle cry, did you notice Kain doesn't say it at all in Blood Omen 2? Not even once. Curiously, in the game data, there exists 2 recordings of the battle cry that are absent from the final release. One of the lines is reminiscent of the way Kain says it in Blood Omen 1, whereas the other is spoken in a different style, which appears more accurate to how classic Latin was used in the Catholic Church and in academia. It is not known why Kain's iconic phrase was absent from Blood Omen 2, but the going theory is that the pronunciation just couldn't be decided on, and so it was ultimately left out. Thankfully, the team behind Legacy of Kain Defiance reintroduced the phrase into the series, choosing to remain consistent with the pronunciation originally used in Blood Omen 1.
You! No! Raziel!
Vae Victis!
I didn't!
Woe to the conquered! I have found the heart of darkness, and you go to oblivion!
Back in 2010, while working on a fan remake of the first game, fans stumbled across a secret passage in the town of Wasserbund. It was a hidden back entrance to a tavern which led the player to a pirate ship. This ship had remained undiscovered for nearly 14 years after Blood Omen's initial release. Interestingly enough, the secret area was not excluded from the final game. It was possible to access the zone through legitimate means. You could gain entry without cheat codes if you travelled to the different corners of the world and activated 4 invisible switches. These were found in Malek's Bastion, Ziegstrahl, the lands of the Nemesis, and a region to the southeast of Willendorf. Upon entering the inn, a teleporter will take you to the HMCS Bitter, a pirate ship named after its captain, for whom the tavern is also named. On it, you'll be attacked by members of the crew bearing sabres. There are many Hearts of Darkness consumables on the deck, and if you explore further, you will find another portal behind the ship's wheel that transports you into the distant future, where the vessel is a complete wreck. This second area is larger than the first, and contains a coastline where the pirates appear to be burying their treasure. Although some fans had speculated that the secret area depicts a battle between the Bitter and another ship sunk by it, Dyack eventually confirmed that the two areas were meant to represent two time periods, both before and after the ship's destruction. This is inferred in-game, as the initial teleporter pad leading to the ship bears the design of one of Mobius's time-streaming devices. You know, when the pirate ship was first discovered, it turned out to be such a remarkable discovery that many fans began thoroughly examining the source code for any sign of other mysteries they might unearth. Despite it taking nearly 14 years for someone to discover the HMCS Bitter, we have evidence to suggest that Crystal Dynamics, the studio behind the later Soul Reaver sequel, may have been aware of the ship all along. In Soul Reaver 1, there's a similar vessel which is anchored in roughly the same part of the world where the Bitter was purportedly situated in Blood Omen. When opening the map within the HMCS Bitter area, the player is still apparently located within or near to Vassabund. In both cases, the ships are positioned northwest of the pillars, which implies that they may be one and the same. So while Soul Reaver was developed by a separate studio, it looks like someone from the original Silicon Knights team, who worked on both games, decided to throw in a little Easter egg to the HMCS Bitter in Soul Reaver, many years before fans would eventually find it in Blood Omen. Speaking of Soul Reaver 1, did you notice something familiar about Kain's earring from the opening cinematic? You should, for it's the same ring Vorador bequeathed to Kain centuries ago when they first met.
After slaughtering 6 of the sheep, I defeated their pathetic little shepherd, Malek. Since then, our kind has not bothered with the cattle, except to feed. And I suggest you do the same. Meddling with the affairs of man can do us no good. Seraphan witch hunts are much too tedious to concern ourselves with. Am I understood, Kain? Good. Take this ring. If you ever need assistance, it will summon you. Despite your youthful arrogance, you amuse me, Kain. It would be such a pity to lose you to the abyss. Now be gone!
Kain would use the ring only once at Dark Eden, where he summoned Vorador to face off against Malek. The ring would eventually lose its practical value, with Vorador's death at the hands of the vampire hunters. However, it carried symbolic significance for Kain, who came to embrace Vorador's ideology that humans were little more than sheep to be sacrificed, so that vampires could enjoy their status as dark gods. This might explain why Kain wears the ring on his left ear, to remind him of the important lesson imparted to him by his former vampire mentor.
Turning the ring over in my hands, I realized that it was crafted from some strange alloy formed from broken teeth, ground down and soaked in blood.
The developers of Soul Reaver included the ring as part of Kain's updated design because they wanted something to tie the Elder Kain back to his fledgling version from Blood Omen 1. The Signet ring was also planned to feature in a cut storyline from Legacy of Kain Defiance. In my earlier character study video about Vorador, I mentioned how Defiance was originally supposed to resolve the mystery of Vorador's resurrection in Blood Omen 2, despite having his head chopped off many years prior. A human Uma was to appear in Defiance, revealing that she was a priestess before being turned into a vampire. Initially, she was intended to aid Raziel in recovering Vorador's head. A fact often overlooked in these games is that the statue of Mobius from Soul Reaver 2 was in possession of the real severed head of Vorador. It depicts Vorador's execution with the very head of the vampire himself. In the cut narrative, Raziel was meant to reclaim the head and return it to Vorador's body so he could be revived. Apparently, there was also going to be a mission involving Kain in Vorador's mansion. The developers of Defiance wanted to have the Elder Kain meet the resurrected Vorador. The way they sought to achieve this was by having Kain summon his old mentor with the Signet ring, just like he had done previously. However, their reunion was not to be a pleasant one. Upon seeing how powerful Kain had become since their last encounter, Vorador would harbour feelings of mistrust towards his fellow vampire. The idea was for Vorador's reservations about Kain to continue into Blood Omen 2, which would go some way to explain their bitter relationship in that game. Personally, I think it's a shame the storyline never came to pass, as it would have helped to mend the continuity issues between the two Blood Omen games. For number 7, I want to talk briefly about the humans during the Soul Reaver 1 era. Some of you may not know this, but if you avoid attacking the first hostile soldier patrolling the necropolis, then other human soldiers and villagers won't attack or run away from you later on. By ignoring the hunters and killing only the devolved vampires, humans of the Citadel won't consider Raziel a threat. In fact, they will come to revere him as an avenging angel and will even bow down before him on approach. There's also a mechanic in the game which involves using the passive humans to restore Raziel's strength. If you are low on health, you can grab a human to draw energy from their souls. According to the lore, human souls were not as deeply rooted as vampires. They did not have to be killed for Raziel to take energy from them. Raziel could sip away at a human soul, recovering his health slightly, but not drain the victim completely. The human in turn would faint, but recover after a short while. Quite useful if you're in a bind, and close to slipping into the spectral realm. One optional area easy for players to miss was the lost city of the werewolves from Blood Omen. In the middle of the Lake of the Dead, there is a small island with an ancient stone monument resembling Stonehenge. At the heart of this prehistoric structure is a teleporter that would transport Kain to the outer chamber of the lost city. The city can only be accessed properly during a full moon, which occurs once every 2 hours in gameplay time. Therefore, players have a very small window of opportunity to visit the area. The sprawling Aztec-styled architecture is very different from most small medieval settlements we see in Nosgoth, which begs the question, who could have built such a place? While some fans believe it to be the work of the ancient vampires, or even the Hilden, I like to think the city was constructed by a third elder race, specifically the werewolves. The lost city was full of the creatures, who only ever appeared in Blood Omen in secret areas such as this. The presence of the werewolves and a moon gate forbidding entry to all but nocturnal creatures suggests that they created this city to hide from the rest of the world, though it's also likely that they simply discovered and colonized it. During the events of Soul Reaver, the Abyss is located where the Lake of the Dead was. If the lost city was indeed built on or beneath the lake, then the implication is that the city was ultimately pulled down into the depths of the abyss by the Elder God. This is consistent with the Aztec-inspired ruins that are seen scattered throughout the tunnels between the Elder God's chamber and the entrance to the underworld. So it's possible that these ruins are the remains of the lost city, destroyed by a creature who has a long history of trying to hide evidence of past civilizations. Way back in the PlayStation 2 era of gaming, cheat codes were far more common. Nowadays, most cheats that are designed to speed up player progression go by another name, microtransactions. Something I hope never to see in a future Legacy of Kain remake. Anyway, Defiance has quite a few of these older type cheat codes. My absolute favourite has to be the one that lets you play as Toon, Kain and Raziel. This cheat, which on the PS2 is up down, R1, R2, down circle and triangle, turns Kain and Raziel into cartoon versions of themselves. They come complete with exaggerated facial expressions, and there's even a cheat that lets you wield a cardboard tube for Kain in place of the Reaver.
Fear the tube.
So next time you are planning a trip back into Nosgoth, perhaps consider doing so as an adorable cartoon version of the playable character. You may get a good laugh out of it.
Where do you think you're going, little soul?
And for number 10, did you know Blood Omen's opening cinematic was supposed to be longer? In fact, it was originally intended as a single sequence beginning from "There is a magical operation" monologue right up to Kain's transformation into a vampire. In an early advertisement, there is an image which features the human Kain with blonde hair and white armour. This screenshot shows a part of what was meant to be a full motion video of Kain's assassination. When fans of the series noticed this advertisement, Soul Reaver director Amy Hennig explained that the full FMV had not turned out as well as the Blood Omen team had hoped. So rather than attempt to remake the cinematic from scratch, it was replaced by a sequence in which the player controlled Kain right before he was killed. It was also revealed that at the time the original FMV was made, the team had not yet decided whether the human Kain should have black hair. Further screenshots would eventually be released to the public, but unfortunately, we still don't have the cinematic itself. There were also plans for another 4 cinematics. These were scripted but not included in the final game. One of the videos would have involved Kain drinking the blood of his assassins. Another would have shown our protagonist escaping from Malek's bastion via a long slide just as it was exploding. There was also to be a cinematic featuring Ariel warning Kain about the encroaching legions of the Nemesis from the north. As for the final video, its intended content is unknown. However, from publicly available Blood Omen scripts, we do know that it would have occurred sometime after meeting Ariel, but before Kain's battle with Malek. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.